Hello and welcome again to Let's Play Shadows of Om. This is Policy of Madness. Last time we entered our Nissy Keep, and we're about to finish it.
Nothing.
Incredible.
Whatever you want.
There we go. I believe that this area is kind of like a trap. If you don't have the keep key. Because I think this is one of those unpickable locks that you need the key in order to open it. And so you can come out here without actually opening the door, and then you can't get back in.
If you say so.
At least I think that's how it works. It seems to me that's how it's worked in the past. What's in here? Did I loot this one? Guess I did.
Verità, credo, oculo.
Of course.
The other day, I read an article in the New York Times about a bread that I call the bread of ultimate privilege.
Incredible.
This is a bread that was
I'm
apparently, these things really don't have very many hit points, do they? Alright. It's apparently created by a dude who, I don't know, made it his life's goal
yes.
to find the ultimate bread, and so he went to all these different places and
Tell me all about it.
was like apprenticing himself to master bread makers or something. I have no problem with that. Okay, I can completely respect that. This guy wanted to make, you know, really great bread. And he did what was necessary. How do I get up here? Is there a way to do it? I don't think there is. He did what was necessary in order to come up with the ultimate bread. Okay? That's fine. What's not fine is the way the New York Times... this is another of those things where I think you can't get back in. Although there is an exit here, and I believe it takes you down to the courtyard. We still need to do the courtyard. I actually completely forgot about the courtyard.
Is that all?
But we are going to do it. From what I understand, this dude published a cookbook.
Nothing to it.
that was like 38 pages long, and it just had the one recipe in it. That's fine, I guess. Certainly, if this is a really complicated bread recipe, I'm sure there were a lot of people who really appreciated the having a whole ton of pictures and whatever else was in the cookbook. You know, other than the one recipe for bread.
Whatever.
Incorrect.
Yeah. He's immune to piercing damage, I think. I'm gonna take out the dogs while I'm here. This is Spot. It's not what I meant to do. And this is Rover. I like how the dogs have actual names. They're not just dogs. They're not just dogs, they're pets. Here's Sparky. And here's Rex. Alright.
I'm waiting.
It can't. It can't. In cat. In cat. Resi Alia.
We're going to leave them down here.
Crossblade with me and die!
All about it.
I'll test your metal with cold steel!
Damn. Alright.
What would you like?
Now we're just going to wait for the swords to expire.
I'm waiting.
Did we get the EXP for all of them? I think we missed one of the trolls. Yeah, we got the 5,000 for the giant Yuan-Ti. So, this guy, you know, he made this cookbook, which I assume is
Nothing
the
to
ultimate
it.
cookbook. It's 38 pages long, and from what I understand, it's just the one recipe. The New York Times published a version of this in, you know, a couple of weeks ago, and it was like an abridged version of it. Now, the lead up to the recipe says it takes 2 weeks from start to finish, but it's well worth the effort.
Yes.
That's the part that got me. It's well worth the effort, but it takes 2 weeks. Really?
Tell me all about it. Whatever.
Insertus,
Test
pulcher,
your metal with
imperium.
cold steel!
Cross blades with me and die.
I've done what I can. I've stood here watching while you killed a troll. Alright. So now we're going to go downstairs. Now that we've done the outdoors portion of this.
If you say so.
It's well worth the effort, but it takes 2 weeks. Really? That's a bold assertion. So I went to read the recipe, and it became very clear very quickly that the 2 weeks is not a true story. Okay? The idea that it takes 2 weeks
Of course.
is not accurate.
Vita Mortis Carre.
Because the first step is to
Vita Mortis Carre.
mix together some flour and some water and just leave it sitting on your counter until it
Vita Mortis Carre.
begins to ferment. Okay, so immediately
Vita Mortis Carre.
it's apparent that what we're talking about here is a sourdough bread.
Vita Mortis Carre. Vita Mortis Carre.
Now I've made sourdough bread.
Incanto.
Sourdough bread is kind of a pain in the ass. I made my own starter, you know. That's kind of an irritant.
Incanto.
But it's not that hard. And creating a starter is
Incanto.
essentially no work whatsoever
If that's what you
until you have it's no work whatsoever until your starter is going, okay? Creating a starter is not really that much work. It's just, you know, sitting there and kind of letting it do its own thing. Oh shit, we need to make the stew. Guess I'll be going back up after I kill all the, what do you call them? No big.
Very, very. Credo. Oculos.
Alright. Get them back in here where they can be surrounded.
Alia.
Alright. Again, no big. Let's go make the stew. The New York Times article, as far as I'm aware, never used the word sourdough. At least I don't think I saw it. It's called something or the other, country bread. It's the name of it is the dude's name, and then country bread. Because calling it a sourdough, I guess, makes it sound too much like an ordinary bread, which is what they don't want you to think it is. Feed 6 Umber Hulks. If we had any to feed Umber Hulks, which we no longer do because we killed them all.
Nothing to it.
You know, calling it a sourdough bread, I guess, would ruin the mystique. But that's pretty much all that it is. I mean, it's a fancy sourdough bread. So you make your own starter, which I have done. And making your own starter is not that much work. In fact, you don't have to do anything with it until it starts to ferment, which takes a couple of days. So saying that this takes, you know, 2 weeks from start to finish, although technically accurate, doesn't really convey the actual requirements of what you need to do in order to make this bread, because you're not fiddling around with it for, you know, 2 full weeks straight. So here's where they came in, apparently from literally nowhere, because this doesn't go anywhere. These are dog bones. And we get EXP just for putting it down here, even though there are no Umber Hulks left. Who is this? Looks like Nalia. Nalia actually came in here. They really don't lack for giving you ammo here, do they? Alright. So before we complete our little thing here, clean up our summons.
Of course.
Alright. Clean up our summons. We've looted everything, right? Yes, okay. Sourdough bread, you know, is sourdough bread. Okay.
If that's what you
And that's what we're talking about here, is a sourdough bread. But what really kind of got to me was near the end, near the end of this process. It takes you about 2 weeks to make a culture, starter culture. Actually, I think it takes more than that, in my opinion, but whatever. Then you get to the point where you're actually baking the bread, okay? Now, this bread is very high maintenance. I've made bread. I've even made sourdough bread. Sourdough bread
Is that all?
is, I guess it's okay. I don't really care for it that much. I made it just for the hell of it, basically just the hell of it, just to say that I had done it. What we're going to do here is we're going to transport all of our loot back to town.
Nothing to it.
And this, I think, is the fastest way to do that. Okay. We're going to immunize all our stuff from pickpocketing first. Once you actually start making the bread, it's really high maintenance. I mean, normal bread, of which I have made many loaves, you put it together, you knead it some, this takes you maybe half an hour, and then you put it aside and you ignore it for a couple of hours. Then you come and you've got to, like punch it down, and then you let it rise a little bit more. That's not what I intended to do. And then maybe you make it rise a third time, depending on the type of bread. And then you knead it again. You put it into bread pans, and it rises for the final time, and then you bake it.
Whatever you want.
Wow, looted like everything. Like everything needed to be pickpocketed. Okay. Now, if you recall from the last game, everything that we have just pickpocketed is now unpickpocketable.
Tell me all about it.
It is now completely immunized from being able to be pickpocketed. Oops. Things can only be pickpocketed once. So, you know, normal bread, it doesn't take that much time. Most of the, you know, it takes like all day to make, but you're not standing over the stove all day. You're doing your other shit. That only takes about maybe an hour of your time altogether over the course of the day. This bread requires a lot of hovering over it. And as a consequence, I think that in order for the New York Times to say that this is well worth the effort, requires the New York Times, or whoever the writer was on this story, to not really comprehend what that effort actually is. In the last Let's Play, I really like how we can gain infinite, because these amounts of gold, it comes from literally nowhere, but then it goes into the amount of gold that we currently have. So, you know, we created 3 gold pieces here out of nothing. And you can essentially get unlimited amounts of gold in incredibly tiny increments, which I think is hilarious. I also think it's hilarious that the see, all of our items here were not pickpocketed, so it's only the stuff that was in our inventory. And the reason I don't do these is because I don't know what happens if you pickpocket a container. And I don't want to find out. I went over this a little bit in the last Let's Play. We were on the map where you leave the Nashkel mines.
Nothing to it.
And I explained a little bit about the concept of an opportunity cost. An opportunity cost, the baseline for an opportunity cost is the amount of money that you could be making if you were working for wages instead of whatever it is that you're actually doing. Okay?
Whatever you want.
I guess we'll take care of that. Speaking of high maintenance, the playhouse is kind of high maintenance.
If you say so.
Oh. That's right.
Yeah, of course.
I really thought the Flail of Ages could not be pickpocketed. Oh well. You assume that the baseline by which you're comparing things is
If that's what
the
you
amount of
want.
money that you could be making if you were doing anything else.
Tell me all about it.
And
Whatever you desire.
actually, I think when we finish with the playhouse here, I'm gonna call it a day. And I guess I'll go over opportunity costs in a little bit more detail next time.
Is that all?
And why I call this the bread of ultimate privilege. This may be running a little bit short, but
Nothing to it. Whatever you want.
Theatre life is never dull.
I trust all is well.
This isn't the place for it. Yeah, this is the place for it. This is theater. Alright.
Just ask.
Well, no, we got a little bit more time here.
What would you like?
So, the amount of time that you're going to be spending fiddling on this bread, like literally standing over it, it requires tending like every 15 minutes or something ridiculous like that.
Nothing to it.
I mean, you're like constantly hovering over this bread, which I think is ludicrous. Nobody's going to appear? Okay. Let's go back in.
Whatever you want. I'm waiting.
Now, a lot of economists and examples in economy will assume that your
If you say so.
regular wage is what you would be making if you were doing something else. If your regular wage would be, you know, $10 an hour,
Of course.
then whatever you're doing has to be worth at least $10 an hour to you, or else you would be, you know, working and making money for that. Oh shit, really?
Incurtus.
Didn't expect that. Personally, I think that's kind of naive,
If that's what you want.
because, you know, to think that if you make $50 an hour, that you could go and just work at your job again
Whatever you desire.
for an additional couple of hours and make that same amount of money, that's not how jobs actually work, you know. It's not how jobs work. I don't think anybody in here casts spells, but let's do this anyway. Actually, let's do this a different way.
Nothing to it.
No, let's do the original plan.
Incactus.
So I prefer to think of
Incactus.
opportunity cost in terms of the very minimum that you could make.
Incactus.
Let's say I'm going out and getting a second job. And my second job is at McDonald's.
Incactus.
And I'm making minimum wage. Okay.
Incactus.
Oops, wait a minute.
Veritas credo oculos.
See, I can't actually open this door with my image.
Resi alia deno.
Okay.
I'm waiting. Is that all? Yeah, nothing to it.
I smell you. I do. You bradunk. No be hiding on Torgal.
None but stronger. He's not going to tell us no matter what.
Tell me all
Okay.
about it. Resi alia pero. Be fun.
Alright. Here's Nolly's father.
Just
There's the stash of gold.
I'm waiting.
Alright. And that's it for Darnassi Keep. Oh, goodness gracious. So let's assume that what I'm doing is I'm working at McDonald's. And I'm making the absolute minimum amount of money
Tell me all about
that it is possible
What
to make
would-
it a job. Okay? Which is, in the United States, it's minimum wage is $7.25 an hour. So let's assume that they're hiring you at
Nothing
minimum
to
wage.
it.
And you're making this incredibly minuscule amount of money. But even at $7.25 an hour, if you work for 8 hours, you're making
Whatever you want.
7 times 8 is 48, 56.
If you say so.
58. You're making $58. Okay? By working 8 hours. And if you're going to spend that 8 hours instead making bread, then that bread has to be worth at least $60 to you.
You've done it? They're all dead? What of my father? Is he well?
Pay you what I can. This is a minuscule amount of money. She'll actually give you $10,650, I believe, if you don't do the stronghold thing. We're a fighting soul. A fighter. Of which I am not. Within reason? No. Except that she never will.
Greetings to you, Your Grace. I understand from Mistress Nalia that you are to be the new proprietor of the keep and the surrounding farmlands, yes?
He seems very skeptical. He sounds very skeptical of this. Very well. This keep is a money pit. The taxes are not actually worth that much. And it will cost much more than that. When you were looting the keep. And we can't visit it. It's actually unclear to me which room is supposed to be mine. I don't know how higher born you can get than being the child of a deity. It seems to me like I socially outrank all these people. I possess divine blood. So, fuck you. And now, you know, it's very obvious from all this dialogue exactly what happened. You know, the Ronals hired the trolls to come take over the keep and kill Lord Darnassi so that they could force Nalia into marriage and conquer the keep, and Lady Delicia is apparently okay with this. It's unclear whether she was aware of the troll plot, but doesn't matter. Same either way. Alright. Now actually you speak to Nalia. I think she disappears forever, because I don't actually know that she ever... She says she'll be in her bedroom, but I've never found her bedroom. Maybe I just don't know that much. We're going to open all the doors here, so that we can ditch the key. Alright. I cross-stitch. Cross-stitch is a very time-intensive... I thought there was a door here. Secret passage? Okay. We just want to get all the doors open. The amount of time that you put into a cross-stitch is immense. I once had a friend say, "Oh, you could cross-stitch and make money out of it." No. There was a cross-stitch pattern that I bought. It cost something like $15. It came with the fabric and even the needle and all the thread. Putting this pattern together took hundreds of hours, probably at least 200 or 300 hours, and I could only sell that and make money if you think my time is worth literally nothing, because nobody's going to pay $300. Nobody's going to pay $300 for a cross stitch, okay? There are people who cross-stitch things and then sell them for money. The amount of money that they sell them for is usually very small. They do little small patterns and then they sell them for a couple of bucks. So one of these little small patterns that you can put together in an hour and then sell it for $5. You know, you've just made $5 out of your hour of time, which is less than you could make at McDonald's. But sitting in your house cross-stitching is, for most people, more enjoyable. Why is this thing not showing up? Than going to McDonald's and flipping burgers. We'll worry about that one later. Let's open the doors upstairs. And the money that you make at McDonald's
That's what you want.
is going to be after tax. So ultimately somebody who makes a small cross-stitch pattern and makes a couple of dollars off of it is probably better off than if that person had worked at McDonald's for that amount of time. However, when you're talking about a cross-stitch pattern like I am making, and I post pictures of it up on Twitter sometimes, and pretty much every time I work on it, which is not every day, and when I'm finished with it, I'll probably put together a video of all the pictures that I've taken of my progress. And so you can watch it taking shape over the time. But this pattern is fucking enormous. And I'm going to put thousands of hours of work into this. And so I can only make money on this if someone is willing to pay thousands of dollars for it, which they're not. Or if we assume that my time is worth nothing. And I'm not. So these things, you know, cross-stitch is something that I do basically for fun. It's not something that I do for profit. And you could say that the bread of ultimate privilege is kind of the same way. You know, if you saw this bread, if you saw 2 loaves of bread in a store and they were priced at 60 fucking bucks, would you think that was worth the money? Probably not, you know. Even the most amazing bread is not worth that. At least in my opinion. But some people just really enjoy baking bread. So for those people, the progress, the process of doing it is, we'll be talking to this lady. I think it's this lady?
I am no one of importance.
Yeah, we'll be seeing her again. Miss him terribly, but too bad. So for some people, the process itself of baking the bread is worth at least that amount of money, okay? And that's fine.
Whatever you desire.
That's perfectly respectable. Oops, that's not where I meant to go. I meant to go here. But if baking bread is not your cup of tea, I mean, if this is something, if what you value in this bread is not the process of making the bread, but the final result of having the bread, then this bread needs to be worth at least 60 bucks to you in order for you to be breaking even. Because leisure time is worth money. Most people could go out and get a second job at McDonald's today and, you know, be making minimum wage today. But they don't choose to do that because their leisure time is worth more to them than the money.
Nothing to it.
Oops. We're going here. Trying to get all the doors open. If your leisure time is worth $60 a day to you, then anything that's going to remove your leisure time and give you less of it has to be worth at least that amount of money. So in order for the New York Times to say that this bread is well worth the effort, what it's saying is that it's worth at least $60 for 2 loaves of bread. And probably most people would not agree with that. But the reason I call it the bread of ultimate privilege
What would you like?
is because who has the time to do this? Who has the time to spend literally all day standing around baking bread?
Nothing to it.
So the people on pikes have been removed and buried. That's nice. We're going to head back to town because we're done here for a while. Who has time to stand around baking bread? Well,
Whatever you want.
it's people who bake bread for a living, people for whom this is their job, like the dude who came up with this recipe, and people who make enough money in their normal jobs but they don't actually need to go out and get a second job. And that's why we call it the bread of ultimate privilege, because you really have to be privileged in order to be able to spend the amount of time necessary to make this bread and then eat it. And let's not forget here that what we're talking about is a sourdough bread. Okay? So I think that's it for this time. Next time, what are we going to do? I guess we could do this. I guess we could do the Cult of the Eyeless. Oh no, we'll do Montron. Just to get that out of the way.
Of course.
Let's go there so that when I load the game next time, I'll remember what we're doing. You can only spend a whole fucking day baking a loaf of bread and tending it every 15 minutes if you don't actually have to spend that time on a second job. If you have enough money from your primary means of employment.
Whatever you decide.
That you don't actually have to spend that time.
I'm waiting. Is that all?
Okay. Didn't really want to do his thing anyway. Sometimes it's hard to get rid of the... He throws a sword at you, and sometimes the sword you'll equip it. And then it's like impossible to get rid of it. Alright, so next time we're going to go in here and we're going to find out what happened to Montron. Which is super useful if you want a staff spear. Which is really important to... It's actually kind of important to have early in the game, although we didn't do that. We didn't go for that. We went for the Staff of Air +2, and now we have enough money to get the Staff of Rin +4. But the Staff Spear is a +2 weapon early in the game. That's accessible very early in the game, so that's it for this time. Next time we'll be doing Montron and probably some other things. So join me then. Later.